Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Moore. I am a programmer for the Jewish Film Institute, and welcome to JFI's Cinegogue Summer Days, CINE, Cinegogue. So this would have been our 40th San Francisco Jewish Film Festival, and unfortunately, due to the present circumstances, we were unable to have a live festival, but we still wanted to have a small festival in some way that we could still show you the latest in Jewish cinema and have our audience still at least connect virtually. So this is our reimagined festival experience. And before we get started on today's program, I just wanted to tell you guys a few things about some upcoming events that you should definitely check out. And those are Broken Barriers. This is a live score with a silent film. This film was recently unearthed by the National Center for Jewish Film, and we have a brand new score that's going to be accompanied with the film online. That's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And then on Sunday, we have a program called Unruly Women, Jewish female characters on TV. And we're going to be joined by the New Yorker TV critic Emily Nussbaum, who has a new book out about her television criticism and is focusing on the representation of Jewish women in television throughout the years. So that'll be a fantastic conversation. And that's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So Cinegogue Summer Days runs through Sunday. So I hope you can join us for more of those events. And I also wanted to thank all of our members and donors who've really supported JFI during these turbulent times. Most of these programs that we're offering are free. So we really wanted them to be accessible, but if you feel like making a donation to JFI, please go to jfi.org and hit donate, and we appreciate all of your support. Today's program is the JFI Filmmaker Residence Showcase, and at JFI, in addition to all of our screenings and programs, we've been doing a lot of filmmaker services, including a completion fund, which we just launched, and we'll be announcing the recipients of that on Sunday at our awards ceremony. But one of our kind of key programs in filmmaker services is our Filmmaker Residency program. And we've been doing this since 2012. We give support to filmmakers working with Jewish themes. And we're lucky to have 5 phenomenal residents with us this year, and I'll be introducing them shortly. But before we hear from the residents themselves, we have a special guest and former JFI resident, Mark Smolowitz. He's a filmmaker, producer extraordinaire, and many of you in the Bay Area, I'm sure, are familiar with Mark. And he would like to say a few words as well. So please welcome Mark Smolowitz.
Thank you so much, Joshua. It's great to see you. I'm delighted and honored to be here today to participate. I just wanted to congratulate JFI on pulling off this wonderful virtual film festival. The residency, which I participated in 2018, was a real boost to my project, The Lonely Child. And so I'm delighted to be able to sit here and sit back and get to know this year's residents better. One of the special outcomes of the 2018 year was that we actually started a JFI Residence alumni cohort, which is a way to kind of create a beautiful and dynamic community of those people who have participated in the residency in the past and want to keep giving back to the organization in the future years. So we are a vibrant small group, about 11 of us so far, and those of you who are residents this year, we will be inviting you to join us next year. And we're all invested in the future of JFI, the vibrancy of JFI's filmmaker services, and growing the residency so it can have more components that are truly national, truly competitive, and truly helping filmmakers advance their projects. I can say confidently and go on record that The Lonely Child benefited greatly from this residency. I actually found my producer, Ben Berkowitz, who was sharing an office just down the hall at 9th Street with me. And we became very good friends and colleagues, and he actually jumped on my movie and we're working together now. And those kinds of relationships are just such a vital part of how a movie moves forward. So thank you to JFI for all that you do for filmmakers who are working on Jewish themes. I can also share some good news from The Lonely Child. We actually yesterday got a grant for $20,000. So I won't name the foundation yet because they're going to announce soon, but it's that kind of capacity building that comes out of this sort of institutional partnership with an organization like the Jewish Film Institute, the ability to fundraise, the ability to move our projects forward. It means the world to us. So congratulations to all the filmmakers and that are being showcased in the virtual festival, and to JFI for pulling it off, and to all of the residents. I know some of you better than others, but I'm excited to see your work today. And if there's anything that myself or past residents can do to future support you, please don't hesitate to reach out, because the alumni cohort is here to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, and congratulations on that news. That's wonderful to hear. I also forgot to mention to everyone, we do have two ASL interpreters that you'll be seeing on screen throughout. And then we also have a Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. So we will have time for a short Q&A following the residents' presentation. So if you think of a question during the event, go ahead and type it in the Q&A box, and we'll have someone reading those and filtering them through. So let's start today's program. I'd first like to introduce Shireen Zales. She's an award-winning documentary filmmaker and television journalist. She has spent the last decade making films about people standing up to hate. Shireen's PBS Not in Our Town films, including Light in the Darkness and Walking in Oak Creek, continue to spark important dialogue in town halls and schools across the country. Please welcome Shireen Zales.
Hello. Hi. Thank you to Josh, and thanks to the Jewish Film Institute for the opportunity to be a part of this incredible residency program. I'd like to thank the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, Jan Riker, the Fine Foundation, and the Gruber Foundation for supporting this film, Stories from the Tree of Life. The film is about the powerful community response in the aftermath of the attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. On October 27, 2018, as many of you remember, a white supremacist walked into the Tree of Life Synagogue and opened fire. He killed 11 people and wounded 6 in 3 congregations that were housed in that space, including Dor Hadash and New Light. The gunman's social media post indicated that he targeted the synagogue not only to attack Jews, but also because they had answered a call from HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, to host a welcome refugee Shabbat in support of immigrants and refugees. The attack on the Tree of Life was brutal, and it was the deadliest act of hate against the Jewish community in US history. When my filmmaking partner, Patrice O'Neill, and I heard what happened, we knew we had to go to Pittsburgh to start filming. For the last decade, I've been working with Patrice and making documentaries for the PBS series of programs called Not in Our Town. As Josh mentioned, these films are shared in schools and communities across the country to inspire dialogue and local action to stop hate. Through our reporting and engagement with communities, we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism. We watched the rally in Charlottesville, and then when the attack at the Tree of Life happened, it was like our worst fears had come true. We were on the ground in Pittsburgh within a week after the killings and saw not just the collective grief and mourning, but the tremendous response of the city of Pittsburgh. And we knew we had an important story to tell. In the past year and a half, we followed the story to see what would happen next. And we found a community with deep relationships, ready to take action and raise awareness about the dangers of anti-Semitism, hate speech, gun violence, and the spread of white supremacist groups and activity. The film clip that I'm sharing today was edited early on in the project by Andy Gersh, and was produced from interviews and actions soon after the massacre. In the longer 60-minute film, which we hope to finish by the end of the year, we'll spend time with the Malinger family, who lost their 97-year-old Bubby Rose, and Wasim Muhammad, the charismatic leader from the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, who raced to the synagogue to offer his help. We follow the Pulitzer Prize-winning team that covered the story and students from Alderdice High School who are organizing and engaging in important conversations about all forms of hate. Civic leaders like Mayor Peduto advanced legislation to ban assault weapons, and local Jewish organizations and their communities continue their work in welcoming immigrants and refugees to Pittsburgh and in strengthening the relationships that already exist. And Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, he just shares his grief and his hopes during these difficult times. All of these people are connected in this neighborhood and in the city of Pittsburgh, where they're working to deal with the trauma, they're trying to heal and to move forward together. This film sample introduces you to the story. Thank you.
There was nothing outstanding about the morning. It just seemed to me like a typical morning. I got to Cinegogue, give or take 9:30-ish. Our services start 9:45. While I've never heard semi-automatic weapon firing before, I'll never forget that sound for the rest of my life. At that moment, I knew this was not a drill.
Initial reports of an active shooter, one down in the Tree of Life Synagogue.
Okay, multiple gunshots are heard from the lobby, possibly 20 to 30 shots.
I told my congregants, go to an exit. If you can't find an exit, go into a closet.
315, hold a perimeter, we're under fire. We're under fire. Suspects talking about all these Jews need to die.
I just pulled the door with all my might and kept it pulled closed, thinking in my mind, if he comes, what do I do?
When it was quiet in my house, you could hear the gunshots through the window, and I've never felt like more fear than I did in that moment.
That phone rang, and I knew something was wrong. His words to me was, we have an active shooter at Tree of Life, multiple victims, officers down.
It's terrible to see these things on TV and these mass shootings, but, you know, that's not going to happen. It can't happen in Pittsburgh. Certainly, it's not going to affect me. But it did.
Pittsburgh is very small. In Pittsburgh, almost everybody knew somebody. Squirrel Hill, almost everybody was related to somebody. Yeah, we lost family.
Everyone coming together, no matter what religion, no matter what background, no matter where they lived, just coming together, being there for one another. That's what Pittsburgh was in this moment.
We're allowed to be furious. We're allowed to be so mad that something like this could happen and grieve, but we need to take that energy and do something positive with it so that we can make sure that this never happens again.
I become frustrated about what I can do as an elected leader in a city that has now witnessed the worst anti-Semitic attack in American history. Part of it is the recognition that hate speech leads to hate crimes.
We knew that this is there. It's been there. Just this year, the first 9 months of this year, over 15 acts of anti-Semitism or related threats or violence were reported just in the Pittsburgh area. 50.
This is the cover of the front page of the Post-Gazette on Friday. Across the top here, we printed the beginning of the prayer for mourners.
I know that we had the highest number of active white supremacy groups in the country.
Enough with the violence, enough with the hate.
I've never been really religious, but you know, I'm probably more proud now to be Jewish than I was before.
It is so meaningful for us to be here, bringing together the Parkland and the Pittsburgh community.
You have to think, this can happen to anyone. It could be me at one point. How can I do something to make a change?
Every day! Enough is enough! Stop the gun violence now! Enough is enough! Stop the gun violence now!
At this time, please stand and join in a moment of silence for the victims, their families, and all of those involved.
We can rise above the hatred that happened right here in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
What I've seen from your community in this love is that there's enough of it that it doesn't just have to be a moment. That we can keep going. That we can keep these bonds and we can build a more unified Pittsburgh, a more unified country.
I can't sit down, just let it happen anymore. I feel a call to stand up and do something about it.
We will work together as one. We will defeat hate with love. We will be a city of compassion, welcoming to all people, no matter what your religion or where your family came from on this earth or your status.
11 beautiful lives were cut down in our synagogue, but we're a tree of life. More leaves will grow back. More branches will grow back. We're not letting hate close our doors, ever.
Thank you, Shireen. For those of you that are joining us late, I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that these clips and trailers that you're watching from our filmmakers in residence are still very much works in progress. So just wanted to be sure that everybody understood that. And this is really, you know, a fun way of getting a sneak peek of films that are still being made. And then later we'll talk about how you can get directly involved in learning more about each of these projects. So our next resident, Theo Rigby, has been creating stories focusing on the immigrant experience in the United States for over the last decade. He has been recognized with an Immigrant Rights Leadership Award from the city of San Francisco. He's a Just Films Rockwood Fellow and won a Student Academy Award. Please welcome Theo Rigby.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Thank you Joshua and thank you JFI. Shireen, that clip and your film is incredibly powerful. I'm sure I'm not alone in that I'm still kind of reverberating with me, and that goes into, you know, just being incredibly honored and grateful to be part of this cohort of fellows at JFI that are just amazing filmmakers who have been making incredible work for a long time. So honored to be part of this group, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share a bit about Sanctuary Rising, which is actually my first feature film. I've been making shorter films, a big fan of short content and episodic content, and this is my first feature film. I've been making stories about the undocumented and the immigrant experience for just about 15 years. And, I often say, usually people don't, on a Friday night after a long week of work or a stressful week of figuring out our reality in COVID, Friday night, like snuggle up to your partner on the couch and say like, oh, honey, I just really want to watch an immigration movie right now. And when I say that in live audiences and not this like vacuous Zoom experience, there's always one person that's like, I want to watch immigration movies. But I feel like most people don't want to watch an immigration film, but a lot of people want to watch documentaries around themes that relate to them. Family, films that are about family or politics or sports or spirituality or whatever it may be. And I try to make films around these themes, these more general kind of universal themes of life that we all connect to. And then my films happen to feature immigrants, and they often happen to feature people who are undocumented and who are living that very specific undocumented experience in this country. So the entry point into all these issues with Sanctuary Rising is through the lens of faith and faith-based communities. So the story is Sanctuary Rising is about primarily about two undocumented mothers. They've been here for 15, 20 plus years and have 3+ kids each. And they both have deportation orders. And instead of reporting to ICE, the immigration enforcement, and essentially getting deported back to a country that they haven't been to for 20 years and separated from their family, they have chosen to seek refuge and to take sanctuary in houses of worship. So right now, the ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, is not enforcing deportation within the walls of houses of worship. In other words, they won't bash down the door of a synagogue, of a church, of a mosque, and arrest and deport somebody. So the film started about 5 years ago. I was requested from the San Francisco Interfaith Council, approached me and asked me to make a short film for them about the sanctuary movement of the 1980s as it pertained to San Francisco. This was for a Thanksgiving prayer breakfast that they do every year. And so I started interviewing people like the former mayor of San Francisco, Art Agnos, and nuns and faith leaders who were involved in sanctuary movement in the 1980s. And I've been doing immigration work for a long time, and I really knew very little about this history, and started interviewing these radical nuns. And even that concept of a radical nun, I had all the stereotypes and assumptions that one might have about nuns. And these, nuns and faith communities really stepping up to support Central American refugees in the 1980s who were fleeing brutal massacres that were largely funded by our government. And my eyes were really open to this story of sanctuary in the 80s. It piqued my interest, and that was kind of the beginning of the project. And I started with telling the historical story of the 80s, the sanctuary movement in the 80s, which some of you may be familiar with. And then really was waiting for someone to go into sanctuary, someone today with the order of deportation to go into sanctuary in the Bay Area. And I waited and I waited, and I filmed congregations declaring sanctuary, and I built relationships with faith leaders, and it never happened. It never happened for many reasons, especially in this administration. If you go into sanctuary and you have an order of deportation, you're going to be in there for a really long time. And it's really hard to kind of come out with some sort of legal status. So I ended up connecting with a woman, Jeanette Vizguera, who is in Denver and started filming with her in 2017, just a day before she went into Sanctuary for the first time in 2017. Filmed her experience and her family's experience. And then she got out of Sanctuary with a 2-year stay of deportation, meaning she could be out with and not get arrested by ICE for 2 years. And then the film follows Jeanette as she goes into Sanctuary. She comes out, and then after 2 years, she doesn't have any legal status, and she's forced to go back into Sanctuary. And the film also follows the story of another woman, kind of Jeanette's like sister, compañera, like her sister in arms, this woman Ingrid Latore, who goes into Sanctuary and has been there for almost 3 years now. And the film really follows these two women's experiences, but I think the maybe unique element of it is kind of addressing the question of like looking to faith communities, and the film is asking faith communities, you know, as people of faith, no matter what your religion or denomination, what is your role as an ally, and what are you tasked to do in terms of supporting your immigrant community? And a lot of faith communities, many Jewish communities, are involved in a lot of social justice activities, and it supporting and working with immigrant communities and being allies is not easy. It's a really complex thing. Immigration is a really complex thing, and this film is meant to show the process of allies figuring out how to support immigrant communities, what their role is in terms of how to position and use their power and privilege. For example, right now, you know, there's the Jewish community in the East Bay has a space that is providing space to people who just got out of immigrant detention and have COVID-19, because there are COVID outbreaks in jails and detention centers and prisons everywhere. So how does the faith community make that decision? Yes, we're going to host someone who just came out of immigrant detention and has a communicable disease right now. So there's many layers to the film, and what you're about to see is just a short trailer that kind of is really just a very brief overview of the project. We've been editing full time for the past 2 months, so we're in post-production now, but far from reaching an assembly and a rough cut. And again, incredibly grateful for this opportunity to be a fellow with JFI, and hope you enjoy the clip. Thank you.
A Denver mom has taken refuge at a local church. She does not want to be deported.
Jeanette Vizguera says she's not giving up her fight to stay here in the U.S.
Mientras yo esté aquí, no voy a salir hasta que yo no tenga un papel legal en mi mano que diga que yo puedo caminar libre. Llevo 20 años viviendo aquí, en Estados Unidos. Yo un día le hice una promesa a mis hijos. Les prometo que no va a ser fácil que a mí me saquen.
People rallied at the state capitol for Ingrid Latore, an illegal immigrant from Peru who has claimed sanctuary inside of a Boulder church.
El santuario me ha abierto las puertas para que yo y mi familia sigamos juntos. Pero sí es muy difícil la vida para mis hijos porque están creciendo en una iglesia.
Every single day we're confronted with human suffering. We have to wrestle with our scriptures that command us. They don't ask us, they command us to welcome the stranger.
The whole history of our sacred texts says care for the marginalized, the oppressed, and the alien.
To me, sanctuary is a spiritual and political act. Instead of breaking a law, we're actually enacting God's law of protection and for migrants who are seeking a better life.
We walked in and the lobby was full of armed ICE police. So we are very clear that they were prepared to arrest her.
Ya estás en el megáfono con tu pueblo. Quiero decirles gracias a todos los que están ahí. Quiero decir que se tomaron el tiempo de acompañarme.
The governor announced clemency for 8 people accused of crimes in Colorado.
Y esto es una gran sorpresa. Hoy recibir este perdón.
Para mí no es una opción tener que estar con esa vida de miedo. Si tengo que luchar toda mi vida, lo voy a hacer.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much, Theo, for sharing your project with us. Our next resident is Eva Alona Bresky. Eva was featured in Filmmaker magazine. She's an award-winning writer, director, and editor of This Unfamiliar Place, 24 Girls, and China Diary. She's the director and editor of the underground sensation Last Scene, and that was written and co-produced by Holiday Reinhorn. Please welcome Eva.
Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be with you. And a big thank you to JFI for hosting this event, and to Joshua and Jay and Lexi and all the staff. And so my project, Daughterland, began, in one sense, you could say it began 30 years ago when I made a short film for film school about my father's past, because my father was a very mysterious person who did not want to talk about his past. And I reluctantly began to inquire into his story when I started making my first film, This Unfamiliar Place. In another way, you could say that the story actually began when I was in my teens, and my mother told me that my father had changed his identity, and that his name, our family name, was not his real name, and that he had done so to escape the Warsaw Ghetto. But she swore me to secrecy and told me under no circumstances should I ever let him know that I knew this about him, which even as a teenager, that seemed very, very strange to me. I was very, very close to my dad. And I guess it just ate at me throughout my life that there was such a big part of his story that he was not willing to share. Nobody seemed to know any details, and that I was not even supposed to know his actual name. So beginning when I was in film school, I started this inquiry, and I made the film. I didn't find out anything of substance from making that film. I decided it was over, it was done, I moved on, but it was still working in the back of my mind, this question, what is his story? What happened? How did he get out? How did he managed to escape? Everybody else died, his whole family died. And as the years passed, and as he got older and he began to lose his memory, I understood that I couldn't let it go. I needed to try anything I could to find out more about his story. And during that process, it became also, I began to understand that a big piece of the story was that he had rejected his Jewish identity when he escaped from the ghetto, when he changed his name, when he adopted this identity of this other kid, he got an identity card from this other kid, and he basically took that name, took that identity, and went on in his life as a Catholic guy named Andrzej Bjeski. As he got older, I was driven. I had to try whatever I could to find out more about his story. And fast forward to very shortly before his 94th birthday, I decided, I think this might be my last chance. And I went to where he lived and I confronted him one last time. And this is just a very rough clip that I created a few months ago for the residency. I'm super grateful to JFI for this residency. It's really lit a fire under me to get this project made. So I'm now beginning post-production. I mainly have been doing a lot of fundraising in this period, creating clips for different grants, and looking for individual funders and such, and beginning to launch into the actual post-production process. And so you're really seeing this at the very beginning, but it's been a long time in the crock pot, marinating, cooking, and I feel very excited to be able to share this clip with you and happy to answer any questions later. So without further ado, we can roll the clip. Thank you.
I just don't like to talk about it. I would rather talk about other things if I have a choice. Do I?
Well, I think it's a shame. It's a shame for all of us because we don't know much about him. I've lived with him for 31 years and he's only told me a little bit about what happened during the war and after the war.
My father was 14 when he escaped the Warsaw Ghetto, a schoolmate's ID in his hand. He fled to the country. His family died. He never told anyone his old name. For 80 years, he's tried to keep this secret, but I keep asking just the same.
I feel like there's a part of you that's really closed off and inaccessible, and I can't imagine how that would feel.
How it would feel, presumably it feels good, or better than the alternative. The fact is that there are some things about my background that I probably intensely disliked always, and I was only too happy to jettison those things.
He erased the person he had been, became Andrzej, the Polish Catholic boy. And so he's lived for all these years, a man who left his history behind.
If I wanted to tell you my life, even a month wouldn't be enough. I could tell you. Time to go. No.
Not yet, not yet.
I have nothing to say.
No, Dad, wait.
Long ago, I don't even remember myself. Why do you want to know all those things? I mean it.
Because I love you.
Okay, then let me kiss your nose, and that's it. Well, that's the end of it. I am leaving.
Why? Why are you leaving? Where are you going?
Well, what the hell you want?
When you guys are gone, I will not have a chance to ask you these questions.
That's right.
This is my chance.
What do I really want him to tell me? What words do I need him to say? Maybe I'm holding on to this story to keep him from slipping away.
Thank you so much, Ava. Our next resident, Yoav Potash, is an award-winning filmmaker whose past films include Crime After Crime, which screened at the Sundance Film Festival, as well as the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival. It earned the New York Times Critics' Pick distinction and garnered over 20 honors, including a Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, the National Board Review Freedom of Expression Award, and over 6 audience awards. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our next resident, Yoav Potash, who will tell you about his project.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Josh, for the kind introduction. And it's great to see everyone's clips. When we do this, I get reminded of the power of everybody's, all the different residents' projects, what they're working on. So I always get a little bit choked up after seeing Ava's clip and everyone else's as well. I myself never thought I would make a Holocaust film, and now I'm working on 2 of them, which was a little surprising to me to have that happen. Today I'm going to show you some clips from one of those 2 projects, but I want to mention both of them because the reason why I ended up making 2 such films is that I think some really unique stories have kind of fallen into my lap in different ways. The first one that we're not going to look at today is Diary from the Ashes, and it's about a diary written in the Lodz ghetto during World War II, during the Holocaust, by Rivka Lipschitz. Some of you may have heard of this diary. It's been published all around the world now, and I believe that there's going to be a museum exhibition of it coming to San Francisco. But one other thing I want to mention about that project is that JFI was really helpful in helping me get NEH grant, a National Endowment for the Humanities grant for that film. So they were actually crucial because we hit sort of a technical hurdle at the 11th hour, and JFI was able to help us sort that out, and then we went on to get the grant. So that's just an absolutely immeasurable amount of help that was provided to that film. The other way I stumbled into making a Holocaust film is that in 2014, Anita Friedman, who's the executive director of Jewish Family and Children's Services here in San Francisco, asked me if I wanted to go to Poland. And the reason was she was rededicating the Jewish cemetery, which was really the only thing Jewish that remained, or partially remained, in her father's hometown, a little shtetl. Much like many of us, many Jewish people all over the world today kind of have this recollection or have heard from their family members that, oh, we came from a shtetl somewhere in Eastern Europe. And so this particular shtetl, I went to it, and I decided as long as I was going all that way, to film the ceremony, to kind of rededicate the burial grounds for Jews that had existed in this town for hundreds of years, that I would kind of poke around in the town and especially try to speak with the older residents there and see if any of them could remember what it was like when about half of their town was Jewish and if they had any stories to tell. And that was the plunge down the rabbit hole of Jewish-Polish relations, which in recent years have actually become very emotionally charged and very controversial. And to some extent, they've been emotionally charged for decades. But recent moves by the now quite conservative government in Poland brought those relations to a head. So the film that I'm making touches on that. It uses the story of this one town, Gniewoszew or Gniewoszew, depending on if you're Polish or Jewish, how you would pronounce it. And I'm also using animation in this film as a way to reconstruct or depict the memories of both Polish and Jewish people who were alive during World War II. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and roll this clip, which is kind of like a long trailer, but gives you a sneak preview. So with that, I will sit back and let you all have a look at it. Thank you.
Small towns are close-knit. It's not well seen in a small town or a village to tattle to outsiders, especially if you're revealing a crime of the magnitude of murder.
Urodzona jestem 13.11.1929 roku.
Ja Janka szukam. Ja potrzebuję Janka Feinberga.
The small village of Gniewoszew represents what happened all over Poland, because what happened in Gniewoszew happened all over Poland. Before the war, Jews and non-Jews lived side by side. Germans come in, and it's the end of normal relations between Jews and non-Jews.
Immediately, all the atmosphere changed catastrophically.
To ja Weinbergową bardzo lubiałam. No i mówi, wybierz sobie materiał. Widzisz, co robią Niemcy z nami. Dziś z nami, a jutro z wami będą robić. Nawet Weinbergowa prosiła dziadka, żeby przechował ich. Dziadek powiedział, za dużo ludzi u nas, ruch i nie mógł.
Co ludzie mówili?
No bo już Żydy powinny wyginąć.
I nie chcieli ich tutaj.
Nie chcieli ich tutaj.
Każdy weszedł w mieszkania pożydowskie, czy tam
What the Nazis started, the near total annihilation of the Jewish population in Poland, Poles often finished.
Morderstwo popełnili Polacy.
Any suggestion that Poland was complicit in the Holocaust could land offenders in jail under a new law.
Up to 3 years behind bars.
This law is not about whitewashing history. And
isn't the purpose of the law to intimidate people?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and so could you repeat this question?
A teraz nie boję się. Raz, że jestem stara, drugi raz za dużo wszystkiego widziałam. I tak jak trzymała, tak i leżała. A to młody chłopak, syn ichże przeżył. Syn.
I have found Yannick. I found the boy you have been looking for the last 73 years.
Oj, nie wiem, co powiem. Nie wiem, co powiem. Nie wiem, co powiem. Nie wiem.
Thank you, Yoav. Our final resident, Nora Mariana, studied creative writing at Stanford University. She's a Sundance International Feature Film Program alumni and is currently developing her first feature film and 1-hour television series. Please welcome Nora Mariana.
Thank you so much, Joshua, and thank you, JFI, for the opportunity to be a part of this incredible program. The project that I'm presenting today is a narrative feature film called Alina. It's a female-driven World War II drama with thriller and noir elements. It follows a group of 4 young women in the course of one night as they undergo a mission to smuggle children out of the Warsaw Ghetto to safety. One of the reasons I really wanted to tell this story is because as far as World War II narrative films go, we more often celebrate male heroes. And this is a story about Jewish women and their allies who operated with very little means and very little political and economic clout, and yet they managed to smuggle thousands of children to safety, even more than Oskar Schindler. Of course, figures like Irina Sendler are thankfully more well known now, but this is a film that's intended to be a tribute to the countless unsung female heroes whose names aren't widely known and who played an invaluable role in the larger network of female smugglers in World War II Poland. To give you an idea about our characters, our girl gang in this film, I think of it as a girl gang movie. They include a chain-smoking woman who played poker with the Nazis to collect intelligence, a woman who assassinated Nazis outside of bars, a nurse and a social worker who smuggled crucial vaccines into the ghetto and children out of the ghetto through the sewer system, and a Jewish woman who disguised herself as a nun and hid in a convent while finding places of sanctuary for these children to hide. Together, these women use extraordinary wits, guts, guile, turning everyday objects like cigarette papers, instrument cases, toolboxes, even buckets of butter as tools to complete their missions. One thing that we're very passionate about as far as our approach to this story has to do with the ways these women are typically portrayed on screen. In historical dramas, at least from my experience as an audience member, women are often depicted as figures of the past as opposed to relatable human beings. And as a result, there's somewhat of a gap or a distance between audience members and these characters. We're hoping to close that gap as much as possible because the truth is they weren't figures of the past when they were in the Warsaw Ghetto, actively resisting. They were present and vibrant and unsentimental and real. And that's what we aim to depict. What's interesting is that when we were doing the research for the short, our proof of concept, we learned about a lip reader who took silent documentary footage of World War II Poland and figured out the dialogue and had actors do the audio. And what was found was that the vocabulary, the manner of speaking, the attitudes of these people in World War II during the Holocaust were remarkably relatable and informal and even in some ways modern. That's really true to who these characters were. These women were in their 20s, they were streetwise, complicated. They feel like when you talk to survivors, they feel like people we would know. And what we found in our conversations and research of survivors is that they were just people who were falling in and out of love, fighting with their parents, having complicated friendships. They were just trying to come of age in a war. all while discovering in the darkest moment of history that they possessed a bravery and a resourcefulness that they didn't even know that they had. These women collectively were able to save over 2,500 Jewish children's lives. And our goal is to really reflect their spirit and that dynamism. We're hoping to make a film that is truly an immersive experience, almost in real time, that's contained as opposed to like a sweeping biopic. You know, when we were making our proof of concept, the New York Times came out with an article that said that 66% of Americans under the age of 34 don't even know what Auschwitz was, and that the Holocaust is fading from people's collective memory here. So when people ask, why am I doing a Holocaust movie? I say the truth, which is that we hope that this project will invite conversations that encourage people to remember and also to engage, to think about what we as regular people, just as these women were with regular jobs and regular modest lives, what we could do in the face of violence and oppression today. The clip that you're about to see is from a 25-minute short film we made as a proof of concept with friends and family, filmed very close to our home. But it's inspired by true events. And in this clip, the women are in the Warsaw Ghetto, in their apartment, when the Nazis are raiding their building. The Nazis are going door to door and abducting children to send them to a concentration camp. And here's the thing, one of the women, Nellie, has a 3-month-old baby girl. So she's persuaded her one Catholic friend with them, a social worker that's working inside the ghetto, to take her baby for her, put her in a box, and try to find a way to escape before the Nazis break into their 3rd-story apartment. And this clip is what happens next.
They're here. They're on our floor. Here, hide these somewhere. Rahel, come with me. We may have to stall them.
Put them at the phone. The Nazis are too germophobic to look in there.
Come on.
Jawohl. Wo sind die Kinder?
Where are the children?
We don't have.
Of course. Search the floor.
Natürlich. Can you open the door?
She has stomach problems. 2 seconds.
Open the door!
Sarah, I'm bathroom.
Madame, you must open the door!
Sorry, sir, I'm indisposed.
Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Just give me a second, sir. I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Okay. Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Just give me a second, sir. I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Okay. Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Sir, I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Get back! Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Sir, I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Get back! Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Sir, I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Get back! Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Sir, I'm using the bathroom, please. Just one moment.
Get back! Madame, you must open the door! Madame, you must open the door immediately! I will shoot down! Madame, you must open the door immediately!
Sir, I'm using the bathroom, please. Just
And welcome back, everyone. Thank you, Nora. I think there might have been a little bit of an audio issue with that clip, so apologies for that. But wow, what a harrowing clip. I think I speak for hopefully everybody in that I really can't wait to see what happens next with all of these projects. So we do have a little bit of time for a Q&A, and it would be great if I could see all the other residents. Everybody there? Yoav, Ava, Theo, Nora, Shireen. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you again so much for sharing all of your projects. So before we take questions from the audience, maybe we could just hear from each of you briefly again and just tell people how they can find out more about you know, what you're working on and your progress as you make progress, and then what stage you're in right now with the film. So let's go ahead and start with you, Shireen.
Thank you. I was really moved by all the clips of my colleagues. And again, I just want to say how great it's been to collaborate with everyone and get some creative support through this process. We are in the process of raising more funds to start to put together the 60-minute assembly and make another trip when COVID-19 lifts and we're able to travel safely again and meet with people and interview people in Pittsburgh to do some final production. So we're hoping to finish the film by the end of the year. We've created a website for our film where you can follow the progress and watch some clips. We'll be posting some extras as we cut them and some additional new scenes. And there's also a donate page for people who would like to donate to see this film not only air on public television next year, but also to share it in schools and communities across the country, because there's so much needed dialogue and conversation around all forms of hate in a time when our country is so divided. So if people go to NIOT.org, notinourtown.org, NIOT.org, there will be a link there to the Tree of Life film website. And I hope you all come visit us, and you can always reach out to me directly and I can share more news and information with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Shireen. Theo, how can people get more involved in your project and help support it?
Yeah, so we are, we're in post-production right now. We are also fundraising to kind of push the project forward, and about 90% kind of finished filming. So, so firmly being in post-production, we are considering creating a short version, either a short film or kind of like a short sample of the film, to be packaged in essentially like a virtual screening that will go out before the election, because so many faith communities across the country right now are considering where is this intersection of kind of faith, politics, and immigration all kind of meeting. And we are, looking for faith communities that want to engage in that way, obviously in a virtual way. So we're putting together a package and potentially putting together a mini impact campaign to go out in October. And you can follow the project on our social channels. We're at iNation Media, so it's the letter I as an immigrant, Nation Media. At iNation Media on Instagram, on Facebook, and then inationmedia.com is our website where you can watch more clips about the film and be in touch if you want to either screen it before the election or screen the kind of virtual impact campaign element that we're going to create, or be in touch about supporting the project as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Theo. Ava, let us know where how people can get involved in your project, and then also before or in addition to that, we got a question directly to you asking. It says, Ava, this is such a powerful story. Did you grow up thinking you were of the Catholic faith?
Thank you, Joshua. I'll take the question first.
Sure.
I grew up thinking my father was Catholic, and he always wore a Virgin Mary Madonna around his neck, really till the end of his life. In fact, he wanted me to have that. It was one of his most prized possessions. And for really until I was, I would say, well into my 30s, I had no idea that I was Jewish, and pretty like 86% Jewish actually. But my mother was not Catholic. She was also a sort of a Jewish non-Jew who was a Unitarian. So I grew up more or less in the Unitarian faith. But there's actually kind of an interesting story that I haven't yet been able to tell in my film, but I will, about how my father, at one point, he was in hiding, and he, using this other identity, which became his identity, and he ended up in Majdanek concentration camp. And he was talking with his family, and some nuns came from the nearby town that they had contact with these nuns, and the nuns took this family out. And as they were leaving, the family said, "Oh, he's with us." And so that's how he was able to get out of Majdanek concentration camp. And my brother is of the impression that that was one of the reasons that he clung so strongly to that Catholic connection, and felt, that was what had saved his life, both through his false identity and through these nuns rescuing this family. And just by chance, the family took him along. One of many, many, many unbelievable stories. I was able to get just very few of them out of him, but it's very rich. I mean, he really was an international man of mystery in many ways. As far as how people can get in touch with me, I have a website. It's evapix, EVAPIX.com. And my new project is not yet on that website, but there's a contact form in there. And I would be very, very happy to hear from anybody who wants to contact me. And as I mentioned, we're, I'm getting into post-production. I'm looking for a producer. I'm looking for, help of all kinds, funding, all kinds of things, and just also connections with people who are interested in the story and want to find out more. So it'd be lovely to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ava. I see that Shireen also wanted to mention that the site, her film site is up now too, treeoflife.squarespace.com. Is that correct?
treeoflifefilm.squarespace.com. Thanks.
Got it. Sure. And Yoav, you have 2 projects that you're currently working on. How can people learn more about your projects and get involved?
At this point, I would recommend people to find us on Facebook. Each project has a page there. And, if people just simply like The Remembered or Diary from the Ashes there, of course, they'll be able to find out when the films are coming out and that sort of thing. We also have a somewhat crude website for Diary from the Ashes, but it's a start, and it'll be revised as the project comes along, and we'll also make one for The Remembered later. But for now, Facebook is kind of our place to just fan up and find out more about the films as they unfold.
Thanks, Yoav. Nora, I know that you're still in the early stages in the writing and research phase of your film, but how can people kind of follow your journey, and also how can they see your amazing short film that we saw an excerpt from?
Well, for the short, it's currently in its festival run, which is predominantly online because of COVID. So if anybody's interested in seeing the short, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can let you know when it's next screening online, or screening in a couple of drive-in movie theaters, but probably online would be easiest. And yeah, we're currently working on the script and actively looking for producers, financiers, really anybody that can help us transition from the short to our concept for the feature. And yeah, reaching out to me directly would be like the best way to get in touch.
Thank you. And I also wanted to mention to everybody that we post a lot about the residence progress on our site as well. So please go to jfi.org and our blog, the Cinegogue, CINE, and you can find out new things about each project as well. So before we conclude, we also had an audience question kind of directed towards all the residents about what it's like to be a filmmaker right now during COVID. I know it's a challenging time, and obviously our residency even changed quite a bit. We're doing these virtual meetings a lot. So I don't know if anyone wants to take that question about their own experience during these times being a filmmaker.
Well, I could jump in and just say that I'm an editor. So for me, sitting in a room by myself is no big deal. Quite used to it. And I'm actually quite happy to have this time and space to focus on my project, and having the residency has been an amazing support and ability to connect with the other residents and the staff of JFI. It's felt very supportive, and I'm kind of happy as a clam doing my project here.
It's nice to hear a positive story. How about anyone else? I know, from a shooting perspective, I think Shireen, you still have some production that you need to do. What are some of the struggles that you're facing in just regards of getting some shooting going?
Yeah, well, we were on our way to Pittsburgh when sort of COVID happened to film some Passover scenes with the Mallinger family. Unfortunately, we've been working with some local journalists on the ground in Pittsburgh, phenomenal team of colleagues who are helping out on a freelance basis. And they were able to film some pickup scenes and do some interviews for us since we haven't been able to travel these months. But also, as millions of people are marching around the country, things on the ground have changed as well in Pittsburgh. And we're seeing the relationships that were in place after the attack at the Tree of Life, sort of strengthening in this moment, in these divisive times when hate is targeting, many communities. So again, we've been following the story, making sure we're covering the events as they happen, following some of the people from the Tree of Life as they join protesters, and just trying to keep up with it so that when we get there, we have the footage from the actual events and we don't miss anything. So it's been a challenge, and financially, and also from a reporting standpoint from being on the ground. But fortunately, there's some great journalists in Pittsburgh who are helping us out.
Okay. So I think that's all the time we have right now. I wanted to thank every resident again for being with us and sharing your projects. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in and supporting our organization. I hope you can stay tuned for more programs through Sunday. And I also encourage you all to check out our Filmmaker in Residence other projects. We've mentioned some of them, but even just Googling their name and looking at the other work that they've done, they're all phenomenal filmmakers. And I think you'll be really in for a treat with the other films that they've made as well. So thanks again, everyone. And see you on the screen soon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.